It is the Consumer Protection Act. It seeks to protect and promote the consumer's interest through speedy and inexpensive redressal of the grievances. The right to be assured means the consumer has every right to just ask for warranties and guarantees if he is buying any consumer durable. Respect the environment, avoid waste, littering and contributing to pollution. Hello everyone, I am Purnima, faculty in the Department of Commerce and Management, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. I welcome you all to this session. In this session, I'll be having a revision of the last chapter, that is Consumer Protection. So in this session, we will be just discussing these various topics. One is the introduction, then the importance of consumer protection. So why it is important to have consumer protection. Then what is the Consumer Protection Act, consumer rights, responsibilities, and what are the various redressal agencies under the Consumer Protection Act. Okay, so let us have an introduction of what do we mean by consumer protection. A consumer is said to be a king in a free market economy. The earlier approach of caveat emptor, which means let the buyer beware, has now been changed to caveat venditor, let the seller beware. So this consumer protection, so before we just look into what do we mean by consumer protection, let us understand the meaning of the word consumer. So consumer is the person who actually makes use of the product. So whatever the business activities which are engaged in, so all these are directed towards the consumer itself. So whatever we produce, until and unless the consumer makes use of the product, it will be just a waste. So in order to say that the consumers are there to just make use of the product and to ensure that there is no sort of a cheating or any illegal activity towards the consumers. So we need some sort of a consumer protection. So earlier we had the concept of caveat emptor. Now what is this concept of caveat emptor? Let the buyer beware. The buyer had to be aware of what he was buying from the seller. But now the concept has changed because of this concept of consumer protection. So it has been now changed to caveat venditor. Let the seller beware. Let the seller be aware of whatever he is selling. So this is the main concept behind the consumer protection. Now let us understand why it is important to have consumer protection. So the consumer protection has a wide agenda. It not only includes educating consumers about their rights and responsibilities, but also helps in getting the grievances redressed. So in consumer protection, we not only make them aware of the rights and duties and responsibilities, but we also help them in getting their grievances. So if they have any complaints against any of the sellers, they can get the complaints addressed and they can get the compensation for if they have been cheated. Then, from the consumer's point of view, if we are looking at the importance, the first one is the consumer ignorance. So most of the consumers, they are ignorant of their rights. So they don't know that they have something called Consumer Protection Act, and they don't know the existence of certain agencies which are there for protecting the consumers. So as a result of which, we say that it is important from the consumer's point of view, because most of the consumers are ignorant about the existence of such an act. Then second one is unorganized consumers. Now all the sellers, the business people, they have their own associations. We have the Chamber of Commerce. So we have various business associations who all protect their own interest as the business community. But for the consumers, there is no organized forum at all. So that is why there is a need for consumer protection. Then third one is widespread exploitation of consumers. So there is widespread exploitation of consumers because the consumers are ignorant. They don't know anything about the Consumer Protection Act, and also there is no organization which is there to help them. So as a result of which, we find that the most of the business community, they are exploiting the consumers. Then from the point of view of the business also, we need to have consumer protection. First one is long-term interest of the business. So since the business has to run for a very long period, so it has to take care of the consumers. So if it maintains a good relationship with the consumers, so they will be just patronizing the business. So as a result of which the business will flourish. So we need to say that because of in the long-term interest of the business, we need to have consumer protection. Then second one is business uses society's resources. Now, any business cannot flourish until and unless there is a support from the society. The business draws all its resources from the society, whether it is the raw materials, whether it is the manpower, or whether it is the capital. Everything is provided by the society, and also the profits and revenue, whatever the business is earning, it is all given by the business, by the society to the business. So it will be the duty of every business to take care of the consumers. Third one is the social responsibility. Now, it is the social responsibility of the business. So the business flourishes or it earns profits because of the society, and it is the responsibility of every business or the social responsibility to take care of its society or the consumers at large. Then moral justification. So moral justification means, so every business needs to just see that it does not exploit its consumers, it has to provide quality goods, it has to take care of its workers, it has to see that whatever loans it has borrowed, it repays it all on time. So all these are necessary from the consumer point of view. And last one is the government intervention. So if the business does not take care of its consumers, then there will be intervention from the government. So in order to avoid government intervention, it will be the duty of every business to undertake consumer protection. Then, what is the legal protection to the consumers? The government of India, it has enacted various acts for the protection of the consumers. In this, the first one is the Consumer Protection Act of 1986. So under this Protection Act, the act provides protection to the consumers. Then we also have the Indian Contract Act of 1872. Then we have the Sale of Goods Act 1930, the Essential Commodities Act 1955, the Agricultural Produce Grading and Marking Act of 1937. So we also have the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act of 1954, the Standards of Weights and Measures Act 1976, the Trademarks Act 1999, then the Competition Act 2002, the Bureau of Indian Standards Act 1986. So the government of India has enacted these 10 various acts in protection of the consumers. So with the help of these acts, the consumer is provided legal protection. Then let us understand what this Consumer Protection Act is. So it is the Consumer Protection Act. It seeks to protect and promote the consumer's interest through speedy and inexpensive redressal of the grievances. Suppose any of the consumer has purchased any electronic goods, and because of which he has suffered some injury, then this kind of sale of goods which is harmful to the customers, it becomes a case under the Consumer Protection Act, and he should be properly remunerated for that. Then let us understand what are the various rights of the consumer. First one is the right to safety. So this right to safety means whether the consumer is producing any electronic goods or whether it is any agricultural products or any packed food, if he consumes it and if he becomes ill on a result of consumption of such adulterated food, then he is liable to be protected under this act. So the safety of the health, safety and health health of the consumers is right under the Consumer Protection Act. The second one is the right to be informed. So right to be informed means the consumer has every right to ask information about the product. So whatever the product the seller is selling, so it may be a consumer durable or any food product, so the consumer has every right to ask information about the product before he buys the product, and it will be the duty of the seller to inform the consumer about the product. Then third one is right to be assured. So the right to be assured means the consumer has every right to just ask for warranties and guarantees if he is buying any consumer durable. Then right to be heard. So in case of any grievance which the consumer has from any of the sellers or from any of the business community, he has the right to be heard in the court of law. Then right to seek redressal. So right to seek redressal means in case a consumer has suffered any injury on account of any of the electronic items which he has purchased, then he has every right to seek compensation under the Act. And lastly, the right to consumer education. So every consumer has the right to educate himself about his rights, duties and responsibilities. He should be aware of the legal protection he gets under the Consumer Protection Act of 1986. Now, let us understand what are the consumer's responsibilities. First one is be aware about the various goods and services available in the market so that an intelligent and wise choice can be made. So whenever a consumer goes to buy a product, he should be shown a wide choice of goods. So choice of goods should be there so that he can choose from the various choice available in the shop. Then buy only standardized goods as they provide quality assurance. So he should go in for only standardized goods, so that is the goods with the ISI mark, because it assures him about the quality of the product. Learn about the risks associated with the products and services. Follow manufacturer's instructions and use the products safely. Suppose the product is the consumer has to every right to know how to make use of the product and what are the safety measures he has to take in order to make use of the product. Then next one is read labels carefully so as to have information about the prices, net weight, manufacturing, expiry dates, etc. So the consumer it will be the responsibility of the consumer to read the label carefully before he buys the product. So the label should be mentioned very well on the product. So the date of manufacturing, the net weight of the products, expiry date, everything has to be clearly mentioned on the product, and if the consumer buys it without his knowledge, then it will be the fault of the consumer itself. So he has to check for the expiry date before buying the goods. Assert yourself to ensure that you get a fair deal. So the consumer should be assertive about himself. So he should see that he is not cheated by the shopkeeper. Be honest in your dealings. Choose only from legal goods and services and discourage unscrupulous practices like black marketing, hoarding, etc. So it will be the duty of the consumer to just purchase only from legal outlets, and he has to just shun all those black marketers and hoarders who will be selling unscrupulous goods. Then next responsibility is ask for a cash memo on purchase of goods or services. This would serve as a proof of the purchase made. So whenever he is making any purchase, he has to ask for a cash memo. So only then he can make the purchase. So whenever he is making a purchase, he should demand the cash memo from the shopkeeper. So that will be an evidence that he has purchased the goods. Then form consumer societies which would play an active part in educating consumers and safeguarding their interests. So it will be the duty of the consumers to voluntarily come together and form an association of themselves so that they can protect their own interest, respect the environment, avoid waste, littering, and contributing to pollution. So it will be the duty of the consumer to see that he does not pollute the environment by throwing away the empty wrappers and discarding all the powder bottles, tubes, etc. So all this has to be properly taken care of. So these are the consumers' responsibilities. Then the next one is the ways and means of consumer protection. So what are the various ways and means in which the consumer can protect himself? First one is self-regulation by the business. So the business will regulate itself relating to the rights of the consumer. So it will sell only those goods which are which pass the quality standards, and it will sell only those food products which pass the AGMARK, and it will see that whatever goods they are selling, they don't harm the consumers. So when the business has its own self-regulation, so that will be one way of protecting the consumer. Then business associations. So there are so many business associations which are coming forward to help the consumers in case they have any grievances. Consumer awareness. The consumer should be aware about the various legal protection he will be getting in case he has been duped or cheated off by any of the business or people. Then consumer organizations. So we have to form as many consumer organizations as possible in order to see that the consumer protection is taken care of. Then the government. So the government also is doing it's having his share in the contribution to consumer protection. It has been passing so many acts to see that the consumer is protected under the various acts. Then we have the various redressal agencies which are there, so to take care of the consumer. The first one is the district forum. The district commission has a jurisdiction to entertain complaints where value of goods or services paid as consideration does not exceed 20 lakhs. So you can just file a complaint with the district forum. So here the district commission has the jurisdiction, so entire district, for example the Mysore district. So this district forum will take care of all the complaints which come within the district, so where the compensation paid does not exceed 20 lakhs. So if any of the parties are not satisfied by the order of the district commission, he can appeal against such an order to the state commission on the grounds of facts or law within a period of 30 days from the date of the order. So in case any of the complainant, he is not satisfied with the appeal or with the verdict given by the district forum, then he can appeal to the state commission within 30 days from that verdict. Then next is the state commission. It is established by the respective state government and ordinarily function at the state capital. So it has a jurisdiction to entertain complaints where value of goods and services paid as consideration exceeds 20 lakhs but less than 1 crore. Yes, so in the state commission, we can see that it has a jurisdiction to entertain complaints which is more than 20 lakhs but less than 1 crore. So in the district forum, if the complainant is not satisfied with the verdict, he can appeal to the state commission. Then we have the national commission. So it has a territorial jurisdiction over the whole country. So it has a jurisdiction to entertain complaints where value of goods and services consideration exceeds 1 crore. So the greater than 1 crore. So if the compensation paid is more than 1 crore, then we can always approach the national commission. So if the complainant is not satisfied with the verdict given by the state commission, then he can always appeal to the national commission for the verdict. And if the compensation demanded is more than 1 crore. Then, what are the various relief available under the Consumer Protection Act, where the district or state or national commission is satisfied about the defect in goods or deficiency in service on any unfair trade practice or claim for compensation under product liability, issues an order. So, if they are convinced that the consumer has been cheated or the consumer has been there has been a deficiency in service to the consumer, then they have an every right to issue an order to remove the defect in goods or deficiency in service. So they can order the seller to remove the deficiency in service or the defect in the goods, or they can also order them to replace the defective product with a new product free from any defect. So they can always ask for a replacement of the defective product. Then third one is to refund the price paid for the product or the charges paid for the service. So the commission can also ask for a refund of the price paid for the product or the charges paid for the service, and to pay a reasonable amount of compensation for any loss or injury suffered by the consumer due to the negligence of the opposite party. So if the opposite party has suffered any loss or injury, then he has to be properly compensated. So this compensation will be paid by the seller, and to pay punitive damages in appropriate circumstances. So whenever there are any damages, so it can be paid in appropriate circumstances. So then the next one is to discontinue the unfair restrictive trade practices and not to repeat it in the future. In case it is found that any of the seller is engaged in unfair trade practices, then the forum can order such sellers to discontinue such unfair trade practices and not to repeat it in the future, not to offer hazardous goods for sale. So it can also say that not to offer hazardous goods for sale and to withdraw the hazardous goods from sale. So if any of the seller is selling hazardous goods, the forum can order such seller to withdraw such hazardous goods from the sale. Then compensate for any loss or injury suffered by any consumer under product liability action and withdraw hazardous products from being offered for sale. So in case any of the sellers, they are just selling hazardous products, and if the consumer has suffered an injury, then the forum has every right to order for a compensation to the consumer regarding any injury. If he has suffered any injury because of that hazardous product, then he has to be properly compensated for that injury. And he also says that the forum also can order for the withdrawal of the hazardous product for sale. Then next, we have the various role of consumer organizations and the NGOs. Now, what are NGOs? NGOs are the non-government organizations. Let us see what the role they have to play. First one is educating the general public about the consumer rights by organizing training programs, seminars and workshops. So, they have to, the way work of the consumer organization is to educate the general public about the rights of the consumers. And by how do they educate them? By organizing training programs, by organizing seminars and workshops all over the country. Then publishing periodicals and other publications to impart knowledge about consumer problems, legal reporting, reliefs available, and other matters of interest. So the second way is to see that they publish periodicals and journals and publications. In that they have to give knowledge about the Consumer Protection Act, the various reliefs available and other matters of interest. Then carrying out comparative testing of consumer products in accredited laboratories to test relative qualities of competing brands and publishing the test result for the benefit of the consumers. So they have to, they are also carrying out comparative testing of the consumer products. So they will be testing whether they are using any toxic products or toxic materials in the products which will harm the consumers, and to test the relative qualities. So they'll check which company's product is of a good quality or a better quality for competing brands, and publishing the test result. So they will also publish the test result in the various journals of the organization. Then next one is encouraging consumers to strongly protest and take an action against unscrupulous, exploitative and unfair trade practices of the sellers. So if the consumers are there, if they find that any of the seller is engaged in unscrupulous activities, unfair trade practices, then the consumers, they will be encouraging the consumers to protest against such traders who are engaged in exploitative and unfair trade practices. Providing legal assistance to consumers by way of providing aid, legal advice in seeking legal remedy. So they are also giving legal assistance to the consumers. So by way of providing aid, legal advice. So if the consumer does not know where to go, whom to approach, then such kind of advice will be given by these consumer organizations. Then filing complaints in appropriate consumer courts on behalf of the consumer. So on behalf of the consumers, these organizations will be filing the complaint against the sellers. Then taking an initiative in filing cases in consumer courts in the interest of the general public, not for any individual. Consumer Unity Trust, Jaipur. So they take an initiative in filing cases in the consumer courts in the interest of the general public. So these are the various organizations. So I hope you have all followed it. Thank you.